Hello. I want to analyze a video taken from a quiz program that specializes in facts and obscure trivia. Um, I will include a link to an episode of QI, quite interesting, from Series M. And it's a very interesting statistic that they studied that a college does, and it's going to be, if you watch the original QI video, you can infer and interpret the data how you wish. But essentially, in this episode, they discuss a study that was done and what leads to a happy marriage. And what they mean by happy marriage is a durable one that lasts a long time. That is, of course, one measure of happiness, I guess, that that you didn't hate each other enough to want to move apart. But the conclusion they reach, and I think this has interesting psychometric implications if you go deeper on the meaning and compare it to things we know about other aspects of human thinking and personality. One is that the larger the wedding is, the longer the marriage will last. And the second, the cheaper the wedding is, the longer the wedding will last. So what you want hypothetically is a really big, cheap wedding. Now, why is that? Now, I would think that, so your ideal, therefore, is to have a lot of friends that, and a free venue and, like a potluck or something. So if you try to find a deeper meaning on that, you see that the large number is a reflection of community, a reflection that this marriage hypothetically does not exist in a vacuum, but in fact exists in a larger group of supportive people. Now, as soon as you say supportive, I think culture. And I think that, if you married into a culture and you say had come from another country and you are now married to someone in that country, if you have disagreements that fall along cultural lines, the person that's from that culture is going to get lots of support, and the person that's not is going to get lots of, disdain. So it seems to imply the need for a large community of support that shares values. This is, I think, marriages that cross cultures can be beautiful, but contain inherent challenges having to do with what is considered normal, what's considered friendly, what's considered romantic. Cultures where all of your spare time is spent with your extended family will find great clashes with cultures that emphasize individuality and autonomy. Cultures that emphasize duty will find conflict with cultures that emphasize freedom or creative expression. So, nonetheless, the idea is that a large supportive community can help people struggle through things. I think that especially this is a great value to, in terms of the ABSO grid, great value to alphas and betas that are part of significant hierarchical networks and structures, and much, much harder for sigmas that are outside of hierarchies and omegas that are under hierarchies. Now, we come to low cost. We're in an era where weddings can be a big, extravagant show. Yes, I think people should look forward to being married. There's nothing wrong with women when they're young thinking I'm looking forward to having a wedding. I think that the wedding itself can become an idol that supersedes the marriage. That is, she dreamed all this time of being the pretty bride in the pretty dress and getting all the attention. Didn't really dream of all of the responsibility, yes, I said responsibility, of being a wife and a mother and creating a life with God and with that husband. But I think that there's people that put huge amounts of money into the show of a wedding. Now, is it possible to have an expensive wedding that puts correct priorities first and does not idolize the wedding itself? Yes, it is. But I think that generally, you look at, gold-plated things, lots of things that are about the ostentatiousness of the occasion, and it gives you a clue that maybe the wedding itself is more important than the relationship between the husband and the wife, more important than their covenant with God, more important than the life they're building together. And clearly, if what you saw as the destination was the wedding itself, then clearly you're going to find yourself shocked and unprepared for reality. So I think the underlying thing is that sometimes, if not maybe statistically most of the time, huge amounts of money into a spectacle about impressing you means that the wedding itself is more important to these people than the love, than their representation of the gospel that their marriage is going to create, than their responsibility to the community and to others. And so, I think that this, as I mentioned, that alphas and betas are going to have a much easier time having a large community. They're also going to fall into the, if I can have an expensive wedding, I should have an expensive wedding, so that they can impress others, so the alphas can show how powerful are that they can provide, and the betas can show how attractive and how they were able to capture such a good alpha. And so I believe that it's going to be very hard to talk a alpha or a beta into, could you put the people ahead of the impressiveness of the wedding? And therefore, in contrast, I think that the lower cost thing, where you put the relationship and the spiritual goals ahead of the impressiveness, is going to come easier both to sigmas that are outside of the impress me hierarchy and omegas that are under it. Sigmas will probably may or may not want expensive weddings, but they will find alternative solutions and not fall into this is the pattern everyone follows. And then generally due to economics, if omegas marry at all because of low social status, they're often able to talk people into giving them things out of generosity. So, for instance, you might see the virtually zero cost wedding that occurs in a church or community center or someone's house or park on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. There's no even thought of big expensive thing because there isn't any money to spend. And so the lesser materialism, more meaning version of a marriage, and you can have materialism and meaning at the same time. I think it's harder. It's harder for a camel to go through a needle's eye than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. I think for that reason, it's harder to see the beauty of the gospel if it is covered up with a bunch of purchases that are meant to impress you. I don't think these things, I think these are outer symbols of spiritual realities. I don't think that you necessarily need to follow these hard and fast rules. As I mentioned in other videos, I'm divorced. And so I've been through a wedding, and it was a positive experience. The entire wedding was done for a $5,000 gift, and so I think that's a very low price compared to what other people spend, although to me, I would think that's a bunch of money, and I think weddings can be done way less expensively in retrospect. That's a Sigma perspective. And I believe the number we were given was 150 that we could feed, and we had to make room for. So I think that maybe I followed these rules fairly well, not knowing them, and it did not lead to success. But I think the underlying truth is what is right, is that you need to find your real spiritual community that is going to reinforce the things that are important, so that when they get to the struggles that inevitably come after the honeymoon stage or the excitement of the wedding planning, that there's people that can say, that you trust, spiritual fathers and mothers, that say, oh, I went through that, and here's how we got through it. And it looks right now like it's the end of the world, but, give it a week, and, things will look different. Things like that. And the meaning of marriage, as I've said, the gospel of marriage is a communication of the gospel itself through the relationship between husband and wife, as a reflection of Christ and his bride in eternity. The gospel is being communicated through the husband and wife relationship. And so that's the thing that ought to be seen in the wedding and in the marriage. And one ought to be careful not to make weddings into an idol that obscures both the gospel and the real commitment to love and work that these two people are making. Okay, I will include that QI link. Thank you for listening to my rambling on this subject. I hope that those of you that are married are blessed. Those of you that are called by God to be single are blessed. I hope that those of you that are anticipating marriage at some point in the future, and I'm hoping that God provides that next wife at some point. God is in control. I preferred marriage. I don't like singleness, personally. Have a lot more time for this. I guess that's something. But those of you that are anticipating marriage, do so. Sure, enjoy the day. It's a great day. It's fun. There's a lot of great things about it. A lot of good dancing, a lot of good food, a lot of sincere expressions of love. There's a lot of good things about it. But do not perceive the wedding as a destination. Do not perceive it as a way to impress others. Rather, it's a commitment in that community to be the thing God intends it to be, which is a representation of the gospel, and to love one another the way Christ and the bride are supposed to love each other. And have the wedding you want. Yeah, don't try to impress anybody. Just do the thing that's really special to you guys. Okay, I didn't need to say that. There's no one to impress. If I've blessed you, encouraged you, given you some thoughts to think about, thank you. Please like and subscribe.